I've often said that when I was postpartum, I felt like I was going through hell with an angel by my side, and my baby was my angel. And so like that, I don't think that's okay. And I think that's a very normalized experience nowadays for women.
Welcome to the Unaparent podcast, the place that delivers deeply human stories about the unapparent truths of parenting. My name is Katia Reguero Lindor, and I am your host. Join us as we debunk myths surrounding parenthood and provide an empathetic, judgment-free space for parents and parents to be. We hope you enjoy the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode. I am so excited for our guest today because I see her as such a fierce mom and so devoted to a topic that is near and dear my heart. The whole reason this podcast was born, postpartum and the fourth trimester. So Natasha Heath, everyone, thank you so much for being here with us, Natasha.
Hello, thank you, Katia. I am so honored that you reached out and to be here and to just talk to moms about mom stuff. I love it.
So to start things off, can you just give us a little bit of background about you?
Yes. So I was born and raised in Los Angeles. I'm Colombiana. My mom is from Cali, Colombia. What else? I was a professional dancer for many years, went to college for dance, and then I started teaching Pilates. I've been doing that for almost 15 years. And then motherhood jolted me into a new calling, a new passion of mine, which is postpartum. I had kids, and after birth, I had a crazy, miserable time. And I knew something was off. So I'm really passionate about learning about what women need after birth and trying to let everyone else know about it too. I feel like this is all information we should have. This is all care we should have and give to each other. And so I'm working with moms around the postpartum cuarentena window.
Amazing. Yeah. Motherhood does that. It jolts us away from whatever we were doing. And it sort of just, our life becomes just reimagined. We have to, figure out
Yes.
something new, whether we want to or not. And that's something that's both beautiful and difficult, right? About motherhood. And it's something that I think it's getting a little bit more, more voice. It's talked about now in the social media realm. And yet when I was a new mom, I didn't realize a lot of these things because I feel like there weren't enough conversations surrounding it and conversations that were like open and authentic, because I feel like there's a lot of romanticizing, this motherhood, which while it is beautiful, the notion that two feelings can coexist was something that I had to learn sort of the hard way. I had to, be okay with feeling the negative emotions that I knew didn't mean that I love my kids less.
Yes.
But it was a process, and it still is, it's a journey. I'm still in the little kid phase, which is really hard.
Oh, it's so intense.
Yeah. And postpartum, that's I guess where the conversation should always start, because it's I say, in my opinion, it's the hardest. It's the hardest.
Yes.
It's when the mother is born, the child is born, but so is mother. So I'd really like to hear a little bit about, your thoughts on postpartum, depression, the fourth trimester, everything that goes into postpartum care. And I'm opening the floor to your opinions and thoughts.
Yeah, can I share a quote that is one of my favorite quotes I've heard around motherhood? It's by Joy Cusack. I think she's a RN, and I think she does like childbirth education. But this, for me, nails the head when it talks about what motherhood is, like the birthing of a mother. So she says, the most difficult part of birth is the first year afterwards. It is the year of travail, when the soul of a woman must birth the mother inside her. The emotional labor pains of becoming a mother are far greater than the physical pangs of birth. These are the growing surges of your heart as it pushes out selfishness and fear and makes room for sacrifice and love. It is a private and silent birth of the soul, but it is no less holy than the event of childbirth. Perhaps it is even more sacred.
Oh, I love that.
Like tears.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there is a lack, like at some point in human history, in the Western society we live in today, in the United States, we have severed this knowledge and information and this passing down and this communal way of being with each other, especially women, and how we've taken care of each other, and how our grandmothers and our aunties and like we would all be in it together, right? Like passing down the recipes, passing down the herbs, giving the healing medicine to each other, helping raise the kids. Like this like apprenticeship of womanhood and motherhood is like has been severed. And so we step into motherhood, birth, postpartum, and it's shocking. It's like, what am I getting into? It's the most important thing you'll ever do. It's the most grand, crazy thing the human body can do. Yet there's like no talk, there's no conversation, there's no like formalized way or even informal, right? In like the relationships of how we're passing on this knowledge and this wisdom to each other. And I know we used to do it, or at least certain cultures are still doing it, right? Indigenous cultures. And I like my mission is to like call that back. I wanted to let all the moms know what I've learned and what they need to know. I want this feeling of like we're not in it, we're not doing this alone, and nor should we be doing it alone. Because for me, postpartum, like I've had a very pretty easy, privileged, healthy, happy life for the most part. And then motherhood knocked me on my ass and threw me into depression. I had no like history of depression for myself, like no mental issues, nothing. But I knew that I was not okay. I knew something was wrong. And of course, at first it makes you feel like so incompetent and guilty, right? Like, oh my God, what's wrong with me? Right. That I feel so unhappy, so stressed, so exhausted, so confused, so lost. I don't know what I'm doing. And again, I've often said that when I was postpartum, I felt like I was going through hell with an angel by my side, and my baby was my angel. And so like that, I don't think that's okay. Like, and I think that's a very normalized experience nowadays for women, that we're like kind of lost to ourselves, trying to dig ourselves out of this postpartum hole, and trying to reinsert ourselves into society again in a way that feels just sane, right? Like, and level. And so yeah, I'm doing all that I can to learn about, and for me, like the key is like, how are we taking care of mothers after birth? There's so many elements. There's so much before pregnancy, birth, like all of that also needs its due diligence and a different shift. But I'm really passionate about the postpartum window and what we can do about that.
Oh, I love that. Me too. I think, everything you said, right? 100%. And again, it's this idea that, yeah, we've always heard it takes a village, but we're raising kids without our village many times. And so we're trying to figure out who our village is in the middle of this society that is not mother or child centered.
Not
it
at all.
is by no means welcoming of children. And I say this sadly because I figured that out after becoming a mom. As a kid, I grew up in Puerto Rico, and I don't remember feeling as a kid kind of shunned. My mom did everything with me. She homeschooled me. And her life it revolved around us, right? But now I realize as a mom, when I'm trying to continue living a life that is now incorporates my children, it's hard to do that, at least in this country. And that
Yes.
is very telling of how we treat mothers in this country, because
Mm-hmm.
they're expected to either, okay, kind of hide away with your children until they're at an appropriate age to be out in public, or
Mm-hmm.
leave them alone with a nanny or someone and go do
Yep.
your thing on your own. It's like there's no coexistence of the mother
Yeah.
and child, which to me that is so bizarre, because my child is a part of me, especially at such a young
Mm-hmm.
age when I'm breastfeeding. You know, they're
Mm-hmm.
even if they're older than breastfeeding age, but they're still little. I don't want to have only two options, which is leaving them at home with someone else, or me not being able to be a part of society anymore because I have small
Mm-hmm.
children at home, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
so there's this disconnect, as you say,
Yes.
and the lack of taking care of mothers. And as you said, this is the most important job, not only we, but as a society, you know, the job of raising children who are the future, that has so much weight and importance, and it's not valued the way I think it should be, you know?
Yeah, there's this lack of like this loss again of like, these rites of passage in
Mhm.
humanhood, right? For I feel like we're losing or forgotten, or we need to call back these kind of like rites of passage or ceremonies that are meaningful, right? Not a
Mhm.
baby shower. Don't give me a bunch of stuff. I don't need stuff. I need food. I need you to help me set up my house.
Mhm.
I need women to gather and circle up and like share the wisdom and the knowledge and the power, and the same, I think that needs to happen at birth. That needs to happen for, children, for men. Like, where are these rites of passages for these transitions in humanhood that honor like what's going on, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And there, it just feels like such a dishonoring and such a discredit of like mothers and children don't matter until
Mhm.
you can be productive and consumers.
Right.
um, that's all that matters, and
Mhm.
it's it's really disheartening.
It
And
is.
and like you said, I like what you were saying, that yeah, we've designed life in such a way that we move away from our families, right? And I want to ensure that when my children have children, if they want, that I'm available for them
Mhm.
if they want me there. Like, I keep letting them know at a young age, if you want me there, I'm going to be there and I'm going to help
Mhm.
you with your children. For us to like think about that, like how are we raising, like you said, it takes a village. How are we doing that? Helping families, new families, young families, and if not, right, if we are away from our parents and aunties and cousins and whatever, and we're in a city, how is the society, how is the city, how is the government showing
Mhm.
up for families, for new
Right.
families, young families? Where are
Mhm.
the, you know family centers, or I keep
The
imagining like,
resources. Yeah.
yeah, resources and like
Mhm.
community gatherings that are inviting to families and children.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's so much.
And you know, even in my limited experience traveling to other countries with small children, I even see some countries that it's the norm. You go out and you eat with your children to restaurants, you know. I
Yep.
live part of the year in New York now, and it's such a stark difference because
Mm.
it is so not welcome. Like they look at me like I'm an alien walking with my children into this nice restaurant or whatever it is. They're like, "What do you mean you're with a small child at this place?" And it's like there's no technical rule that they're not allowed at this particular place, but a lot of places there are rules that children aren't allowed. But even, you know,
Wow.
regardless, it's like, why? You know, they're and again, it's, you know, people listening who agree with having like childless places. Sure, there can be places to honor people who don't want to be around children, but
Hmm.
not like that seems to be the norm. Like, don't take your children out at night to, you
Right.
know, a restaurant. Like,
Yeah.
to me it's kind of bizarre because it's completely disregards the breastfeeding mom, the mom of small children, and
Hmm.
not to mention, you know, when it's I mean, I at least have this philosophy with my husband. We do things as a family, you know, so, you know,
Mm-hmm.
sure, every so often we'll have a date night, which is meant to be just us. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll still take my baby while I'm breastfeeding, right? Because that is a time when I mean, for the first 2-3 years, she's attached. She is an extension of me, right? I am
Mm-hmm.
breastfeeding. After that, okay, we can do a few, you know, date nights without children. But otherwise, we like bringing them where we're going because we didn't have children to just leave them behind and kind of carry on with our lives as if we didn't have kids. You know, it's like we
Mm-hmm.
incorporate them in as much as we can, and it's
Mm-hmm.
really hard to do that in places where they're just not welcoming of
Yeah.
children.
Yeah.
And it's really disheartening. And I know there's this, like, now a new notion that millennials and, you know, the younger generations are not having kids, or they're having
Of
kids,
course
you
not.
know, much later. And it's like, why would they when there
Why?
isn't a society that is welcoming of mothers and children, that allows the working mother to still be part of society? And if she doesn't, you know, like, she gets months of, you know, leave, of paid maternity leave when she wants to be with her children, you know, and she should be
Mm-hmm.
able to be with her
Yes.
newborn for
Yes.
several months, you know. So it's so many
Yes.
layers to, like, I don't blame them. Like, I had kids, but, like, I wouldn't blame me if I didn't want to have kids in
Yeah.
this, you know, society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so unsupportive. I remember there was a restaurant. I'm so sad it shut down, but there was a restaurant in LA that had like this space when they had like nannies, or, you know, I don't know what we call them, childcare providers, and a
Mm-hmm.
whole room for children, and that you could go to the restaurant and your children can go play, and they were being watched, and they could come join you and eat. And there, you know, there was this like it, imagine if all spaces had some form of that. If
Mm-hmm.
all, I don't know, grocery stores, business buildings, you know,
Gyms.
event spaces, gyms,
Mm-hmm.
if
Mm-hmm.
they all had a space, if everything was designed. I had a good friend of mine, a mama, Akia, she once told me, I can't wait for one day when everything that is built or designed, everything is the first thing that's thought of is women and children when they design it, whatever it is, a park, a parking lot, the next skyscraper, the whatever, the next corner market. Everything
Mm-hmm.
is designed with the women and children first in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine like what kind of society that would be?
It would definitely invite, I think, people to become parents, you know. um and that's something that I wanted to, you know, ask you about, like, this concept of a mother-centered society. Like, what all would that look like to you, you know, other than what we're discussing right now?
Yeah, well, I think that like an example of that, like designing everything with mothers and children first, right? Are
Mm-hmm.
their needs being met? Are they being supported? Are they being, you know, financially, are they well off? Do they have just all their basic needs met? Because I know, and I just know, we know like at the root of corporate America and capitalism is not
Mm-hmm.
happy, healthy humans. It's unhappy humans that feel like they have to buy their happiness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So unfortunately, that's the design. But if it
Mm-hmm.
were the opposite, if we wanted people to be happy and healthy, then I think that's where you start, mothers and children, right? So
Mm-hmm.
making sure they have everything they need at birth, pregnancy, childhood, you know, just families in general. And then, gosh, I just think we'd be in a much different society. We'd be a lot slower, and also
Mm-hmm.
allowing women to like really have a say, especially mothers,
Yes.
in like how societies are run, how they're built, how, you know, the education system, like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
it's a nice future to dream of.
yeah. No, it requires a paradigm shift, you know. It's not something that, the way the society is set up now, it's not possible, right? It has to be a completely reimagined shift. And as you said, it will require putting, you know, mothers and children first in, you know, in designing what the society is going to look like, right? um
Mm-hmm.
and the education system, That is something that
Mm-hmm.
is, I think, so key.
Mm-hmm.
Because from there, stems, the future, right? And so obviously the capitalism, as you said, corporate America, it's designed to kind of keep, people in that rat race. And that pace is not something that is conducive to motherhood and
Mm-hmm.
children, because if you try to keep up with that
Or even
pace, you
just
are
humans.
humans, right? Humans
Yes.
without all of the rest, because obviously
Mm-hmm.
the stress, the disease that come from the stress, and this is a topic that we could probably go on and on about, right? But if we were just talking about, right, parents and children, it takes at least me as a mom 4 times as long to do anything now with children, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's like this idea that I don't have to like do this, I don't have to maintain this pace of like
Mm-hmm.
production that society wants you to maintain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it requires it for you to keep up with all of corporate America. But just thinking in my daily life how much longer things take me with children, with small children
Mm-hmm.
at least.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that idea that it's okay to like, take time to do this, and you don't take kids at this fast pace of like, you need to hurry up, you need to do this, you need to do that. This is like a super like
Mm-hmm.
busy work type of environment, where if you wanted to take a pause to play for a minute, kids are meant to play, obviously within a paradigm of there are responsibilities, there are rules, there's obviously you want to raise responsible children, but children are meant to have fun and do fun
Yeah.
things. And I think the mother becomes so overwhelmed and overstimulated. And I say the mother, assuming she's like the default parent, right? The main
Hmm.
caretaker. But it could be a father in this case. The parent gets so overwhelmed and overstimulated because it's like, we need to hurry. We need to be at this
Mm-hmm.
place, or we need to hurry up and do this or do that. And there's no notion of just like leisure to be,
Yeah.
to create, to
Mm-hmm.
discover,
To play.
to play, like you, and playing is creative. It's a form of creativity for kids, it's starting from scratch, reimagining what the society would look like.
Yeah. And the pace of life. I
Mm-hmm.
know that that's been a big struggle for me. That's probably my biggest challenge is when I get into a place of like, hurry, we're going to be late.
Mm-hmm.
Hurry, we got to hurry. I'm like the worst version of myself.
Yeah.
Even without kids, I was the worst version of myself when I'm like feeling like I got to hurry up and be somewhere. And like,
Mm-hmm.
who am I hurrying up for? You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like, at no point was I ever threatened to be fired. I was never like late enough for a job. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and even with kids, my kids are in first grade and second grade right now. So what if they're 5 minutes late? So what if they're 10 minutes late? Like,
Mm-hmm.
um, and it's still my biggest struggle is, um, fighting this like pressure to like hurry up for what feels like capitalism,
Mm-hmm.
and being a grounded, more playful, present parent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, that's probably my biggest challenge right now, because I still, like, even this morning I was like, I will try to shut down my kids' playfulness so that we can hurry up and do something or be somewhere. And of course, you got to find the balance. We do want to
Mm-hmm.
learn to be timely when it's important, and responsible and disciplined, all that, but also, at what expense?
Right.
When you become a mother, a parent, it's literally the most important thing. Like, you're
Mm-hmm.
raising another human on this planet. You're caring for, trying to keep them alive, trying to keep them loved. Like, there's so much that goes into it. Educating them, just teaching them to be in this world. It's like full energy, full everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yet also, like, who are we? And I think again, if we had our basic needs met and there was no pressure to be somewhere or be somebody or feel that, like, just knowing that what we're doing, especially with young children, is so valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine if everyone just said, you're good, just like take 2 years, just
Right.
like slow down, we got
Mm-hmm.
you, be with your
Mm-hmm.
child, like, you'll have time, we'll be here when you, like,
Yeah.
to not feel like we're going to lose our place in society because we're
Taking
spending
time.
taking time with our children. But to
Right.
know that we are the most important part of society at the moment. And you see it all the time. I know I have a friend, Shabnam, who has two children, and she has a young infant right now. And she was like a big boss, like CEO, like running companies, speaking at big conferences and things, like at the table with lots of men, like she was like top dog. And now she's feeling so shut out, like now, like not getting hired, not being considered, not being thought of. And I know there's a sense of identity of like, oh, am I just forgotten? Or where is the balance where we do give mothers that flexibility, right? That yes is the most important thing, but also how are we making space? So if we are all, right, if it does take a village, then where is society, our families showing up to fill in the gaps so that there is this balance of like parents being able to still fulfill their roles, especially mothers. I'm just going to say it lands on mothers for the most part to balance this like overwhelming job of running a household and taking care of children, and yet still feel like you still like are part of, you're feeling your identity, you're being fulfilled outside of just this role, right? And there's so much.
There's so much to that. I mean, even though I'm like intellectually challenging all of these notions and, like I want it to be put into practice and be the norm, I'm still fighting against these internalized beliefs that I had about what it means to be, a spouse, a mom, and the lack of productivity I feel that I am producing. Like I don't feel like I ever do enough. And at the same time, I feel like I don't have the mental bandwidth for anything else on my plate. And it's like, it's obvious, it's such opposing like feelings, I know intellectually, I know that it's a lot of beliefs that I'm trying to squash. And yet, it's like, damn, everywhere I look, it just seems like someone's doing, more and more is expected, of the mom. There's working moms, I'm just a stay-at-home mom, but that goes back to the lack of value that is placed on mothers who have the hardest and most important job, right, in the world. And that's not to say there's not other super important and valuable jobs out there. It's just to say that those probably are valued. They're not just monetarily compensated. They give to, capitalism or whatever it is. And that's not to say that that's not fulfilling for some moms, and they need that, they need that to go back into the workforce. And that's awesome. If you have something that you're so passionate about that really also gives back to people, that's really awesome. And that's not taking away from how important motherhood is, right? And how important our job is and how little value is placed on that. And, if, again, as you said, if you were seen as not just a stay-at-home mom, but like, wow, how awesome that is your role, that you're occupying that role, that you're taking on that role, which is, so incredibly difficult and so important and so valuable. I probably wouldn't feel these opposing emotions of like, am I doing enough? It's hard. It's hard because it's a battle that I have in my mind that I know is internalized from external, societal pressures.
I was going to say, I remember during COVID, I think it was for the whole country. Yeah. When they were giving out checks to everyone, right? Everyone got money for a while because the world shut down. And with families, you got more, and especially per child. And I remember when that check came in and I knew that it was based on like how many children we had in our household, there was something that felt so right about that. I was like, this needs to be all the time. I feel like I'm getting paid for doing my job in this household. That's what it felt like when that COVID check came in. And I feel like something like that needs to be in place so that when a family is being created, a new child is showing up, there is like, we're investing in that child's future. Like, right, a certain amount of money goes to that household so that they can figure it out, whether it's the mom stays at home or the dad stays at home, or they hire someone and they give that money to that person to help them with their children, right? Like there needs to be like an investment in our families and the work that goes into raising a child, right? You know, I think of just, you know, I can't imagine like the money that goes into the military, for example, or the money that is invested or that goes around just floating around in places like Vegas. Like there's tons of resources and money out there that like, if just humanity could just like wake up for a second and be like, can we just reprioritize? And, you know, like, I know that the resources are there and it's possible. We just have to decide to care about it.
Right. Exactly. Decide to care about, you know, different things and reallocate those resources where they actually matter and make a difference for people. Like,
and I know we can't change that now. Like, I know that maybe it's like with how we vote and all that can maybe slowly change that. But in the meantime, like, for example, what I'm doing now in my work, I work with birthing families. I try to get them while they're pregnant. Like, let's prepare beforehand. And I'm just trying to shift, like educate them. Like, this is what mom's going to need after birth. This is how you can feed her. She needs to rest so she can recover. Like, to like just set them up to prepare, right? So one family at a time. And then when they think like, oh, maybe my mom can come out, I'm like, yes, have your mom come out, right? So for us to shift just right now, like that's what I'm trying to do. It's just one family at a time. And I'm working on a workshop so I can work with several families at a time. But I hope to just set people up to start reframing, right? It is a reframing. So that if you do get married and you do decide to have children, how are you setting it up so that you can be as successful as possible? Who is your village? Who are you going to live near? Who is going to help you once the baby comes? You know, to be thinking about those things, like actively reframing and reshaping your reality around, right? Like creating your village,
right?
And not just being shocked when you get there.
Exactly. Yeah, it's preventative, right? It's kind of what I think all, you know, in medicine, it should be all about prevention, you know, like before we get to a critical point, let's see what we can do to mediate that, right?
Right.
And I think that's really important, even to start with, you know, a therapist, a psychologist, whatever you want to call it, so that before you maybe you don't go into postpartum depression, but before you know whether you do or not, you have someone that is there to help you, you know, mentally, that can help mediate if you do go into that postpartum depression. And this time around, at least, I had the tools, right? I had just had my second baby in June. The first time I had no idea, and I had to get a psychologist because I went into a really bad postpartum. I call it postpartum depression. You know, I know my husband, even though my midwives did a really good job about educating both of us, and that's really important. Like, whoever your partner is, if, you know, hopefully you have a supportive partner in this situation, your partner really needs to be on board and understand and realize, you know, just what you need. You know, he or she will be a really important part of your village, right? They'll be able to see the signs if you need, you know, postpartum care additional to you know, a psychologist. You might, you know, and that those are things that my midwives at least educated us about. And even so, I don't think he realized that I had gone into postpartum depression. And I kept feeling like, no, I'm not okay and I need this, right? But the second time around, I think having had the tools prior, because I I stayed with her, I'm still seeing her weekly, my therapist, and it's made such a huge difference this postpartum. I think I was just in much better mental state. Obviously, second time around, you know kind of what to expect, but I've heard of moms who their first time they didn't go into it, and their second or third time they did. It's really depends. So I didn't assume that it would be better just because I'd done it before. But I did have the tools. I had my therapist. I saw her weekly, and I had the I guess I knew what I needed, and I had that in place the second time around, right? When you've never done it and you're not educated, you don't know these things, right? You're not told this usually in traditional care, medical care. I had midwives, and they were really, really informative about these are the people around you. Like, is it your mom, your sister-in-law, your husband? Okay. And they all were part of this education process. It wasn't just me. It was everyone around me who was gonna be my village in one way or another.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I would love to hear what those tools are, aside from like having your weekly therapy. What other tools like really set you up that second time around that helped you?
Yeah. So I think being able to understand what I need so that I can voice it to whoever it is. In my case, it was mostly my partner, my husband. I think it was such a huge thing the first time around that I had no idea what it was that I needed. I just knew that I didn't feel good. Mentally, I wasn't in a good place. I was mad that he could just leave whenever he wanted, and I'm home alone with a baby figuring this out by myself. Not to say he wasn't present. He was. He just had a job. He had to go do things, And there were so many elements that I had no idea that I was going to feel this way, that I think I was also fighting against, well, I sound irrational, but nonetheless, I feel these things, And so having validation for my feelings was so huge, because it right off the bat let me know this is normal. You're not crazy. You're not a bad mom. You're not a bad spouse. This is all part of postpartum,
Yeah.
And it's not the same for everyone, but I think a lot of people can relate in the fact that there's so much like stress that you didn't know existed. Like, I didn't know I was an anxious person until I became a mom. Everything gave me anxiety after that, just everything. And I didn't know that about myself. So realizing that, not liking that about me, accepting that part of me, understanding that part of me, understanding my needs that surrounded these negative emotions, that was such a journey. And it still is. And being able to voice that to my village, to whether it was my mom or my husband or my sister-in-law, whoever was, the person I needed something from, not feeling shame in voicing my needs. That was so huge, because it honors me, and and if I believe that I'm crazy or I'm irrational or I'm asking for things that I shouldn't, then there's no way anyone else is going to be able to help me, right?
Yeah.
So that was, I think, the hugest part.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I feel like I know something I've had to go through, but I remember working with some postpartum moms, and I asked them, what does your baby deserve? What do your children deserve? Do you feel like they deserve happiness, health, joy, like all these things, like, and don't you think their mother deserves that as well? Like, mothers need to be happy, healthy, grounded, sane, taken care of, like have their needs met so they can show up for their children. If you want to be that, if you want to be a good enough mom, a good enough parent, if you want to be, I know that I'm assuming most of us desire that, in parenthood. I desire so badly that, my kids just feel safe with me, that they feel my love, that they feel that I'm getting their needs met, and that if I can't do it, I'm going to find someone that can,
Right.
If I know that they deserve that and I provide a lot of that for them, I need that too. I need to be happy, healthy, sane, grounded, get all my needs met.
Right.
And so a lot of that has become, for me, reprioritizing. A big part of my journey was not only getting out of depression, right? Just and it took time, and I did some work, and also what came out of that was I learned I had an autoimmune condition,
Mm.
and I didn't even get the diagnosis until 6 years after the first birth. And
Wow.
I'm, now like this last year, really been able to work on that, and and a big part of getting that diagnosis, it was a big wake up call for me of like reprioritizing, being like, my body is clearly not okay. My body is screaming at me saying,
Mm-hmm.
enough is enough. It's time to slow down, and it's time to reprioritize. It's stop trying to do all the things, stop trying to be all the things for everyone else. Like, what is my priority? My priority is my children, my family, making sure I'm there for them. And then if that's the priority, my health needs to be on top of that, so I can
Right.
do that second thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, and with autoimmune condition, it usually stress and diet, right, is usually kind of like the thing you work with to try to manage it. And I had to reduce the stress that was in my life. And even with this like passion and this calling that I have of like trying to build a new business, trying to work with moms, like trying to do this new thing, I can't do it as fast as I want, and I have to be okay with that, and just learning how to reprioritize and not trying to keep up with the speed that life is trying to have us at. It's just not, clearly it's not working with like
Right.
all across the board. It's not just moms, it's men, it's teenagers, it's youth, it's children, like it's all across the board. We are not keeping up with the way we've designed life right now.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you for sharing that. I know that's got to be such a hard journey. And again, at least for me, it's removing that element of shame so that I can honor my intuition, because that's one thing that has never failed me as a mom. The mother intuition is usually right on. And not only that, just being able to embrace feelings as they come. They might be a lot of negative feelings, and holding space for them, while also, realizing this is part of it. This is, this is a phase. It's, a phase of me as a new mom, of my children as being little kids. And it's a daily practice. And there's this one last thing I want to bring up, because I don't have boys, right? You have a little boy. And I just want your input on what it means to raise heartful boys into heart-led men.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, my son, just thinking about it makes me want to cry. He is so sweet. He is so empathetic. He has feelings. He's sensitive. When issues happen, he wants to hug it out. And thankfully, my husband also cares how people feel, cares how people think, wants him to feel his feelings. So he has that example. And I think it's so important. We can't keep hardening our boys into men either too soon or at all. Like, right? We're human. We have feminine and masculine. We all have anger, sadness, fear, joy, to let our boys have permission to feel all these feelings, to express these feelings in a healthy way, show them how to express them, talking it out, physical activity, whatever it is, and to know that it doesn't devalue them to feel this way. And I'm so glad. I feel like the culture is starting to change a little bit in these younger generations, even in like the school system, and at least where my kids are going right now, I feel like they're very mindful of like social emotional learning and giving the kids language and tools around feelings and expression. So I feel like just humanity as a whole, we're kind of maturing in that sense. And I can see that, like I've heard my son say like, it's okay to cry. And I'm like, yeah, it is, So I don't, hopefully there's not too much to battle against as he gets older.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully he keeps feeling safe to feel all the feelings, because we need compassionate men. We need compassionate leaders. If we want to change our society and have a mother-centered, child-centered world, we also need our men, hopefully, to believe that and care about that. And I think that's through compassion, through love, through having safe outlets. And I think a lot of it too is men starting to be able to turn to each other for support, the way women kind of naturally do and easily do. Building a culture for men and boys to know that they can be a safe space for each other. It's not just about anger or fighting or sports or whatever, right? Whatever. That there is also space to create brotherhood with each other in vulnerable times. So I hope to create, and I know my husband will help, and our community and our family will help kind of shape that for him as he gets older.
Thank you. Yeah, we, that's the one thing that I know, if I ever have a boy, it's something that's so important for me to kind of nurture in a little boy, that they can feel all the same emotions that their sister can feel without feeling shame or burden for feeling those things. And I, from personal experience, know that those little boys make amazing husbands, and that's what mothers need. They need, also their partner to have that empathy and to realize, all that those emotions, that all of the emotions that go into parenting, and to be able to hold space and hug you. My husband, he hears me having a hard time with the kids, and he just comes and he gives me a hug, and he's like, how can I help? And that's what we need, that's what we need. So thank you for sharing that. I got emotional, because that's really key. That's really key for me in like not shaming myself. It's knowing that my partner's not either, he's there to support me and to understand that it takes two. I mean, it takes a village, but when it comes to, we're a partnership, and so we're together in this, and it's just as much his job as it is mine, and we're not perfect, and we have moments, and so he's there to kind of take over when I'm like too overwhelmed to, do it the way I want my kids deserve. They deserve love and compassion, and I do too. And he's there to give that to me, and then I can give that to my kids.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's so sweet. Yeah. It sounds like you have a great husband. I do too. I'm so grateful. Just with big hearts, with supportive, amazing fathers. And willing to come from their heart, lead from their heart, speak from their heart. It's beautiful.
We're about at the end of our time, but Natasha, it's been such a pleasure and honor to have you on our podcast. So thank you again. If you want to let our listeners know where they can find you, follow you, please do.
I have a website where with my services for postpartum care. It's a postpartum education, and it's called itstartswithmama.com. That's MAMA. Itstartswithmama.com. You can find me on Instagram at mama_Tasha9. I want to help mamas out. Let me help you. help you.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. And I appreciate all that you're doing in these conversations you're having. They're so important. Thank you, Katia.
Thank you. Gracias, and thank you for listening to this episode of the Unaparent podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe as we release a new episode at least every month with an exciting new guest. Be sure to also follow us on Instagram for all the Unaparent content you never knew you needed.